All right, so we are now recording. So again, welcome to everybody. Those of you who have joined us recently, this blows me away. So this is the biggest webinar I have done yet, and I'm very excited to do it because I love talking about invasive species and letting everybody else know about them too, because it's not something I think a lot of people are really familiar with. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you right now. There we go. And now we're going to go ahead and start the slideshow. So I should have said this before. My name is Jamie Vbach, and I am the Will County Director for the Conservation Foundation. And there's my contact information. You are welcome to contact me anytime. Drop me an email. That phone is for my office line. I do get emails with any of the voicemails on there. So if you want to call, you can. I'll just have to call you back because I am working from home. But email is a really, really good way to get in touch with me. So with that, Conservation Foundation, we are a 501c3 and have been around since 1972. Unfortunately, I think sometimes we're one of the area's best kept secrets. Not a lot of people know who we are and what we do, but basically we're improving the health of our communities. And that's why we do this. It's great to preserve open space. It's great to protect the water. But at the end of the day, it's all about protecting the health for us, protecting the health of nature. So we all win when we protect nature. So we've helped to protect over 35,000 acres and 200 parcels, 43 conservation easements in 7 counties. As I mentioned before, we work mainly in Kane, Kendall, DuPage, and Will. But when there's projects and things we can get involved in outside of those areas, we definitely do that as well. And why is it important? Quality of life, right? Open space protects our water quality, our drinking water, protects our air quality, protects habitat for wildlife. And it's good for kids, especially in times like these. We need to get outside. Our kids need to get outside. My son kind of likes to go into the basement and just do his thing down there, but we got to drag him out to get him outside. And once he's out there, he loves it. But we got to remember to take time to go outside because it's good for our physical health as well as our mental well-being as well. And we have a future responsibility to future generations to make sure they can enjoy the things that we get to enjoy. All right, so what is an invasive plant? So it's an interesting question because everything is native somewhere. All of this stuff has a home range somewhere, just not here. And many times we bring them in, usually from Europe or Asia, because they're pretty, or they've been used as food, or whatever reason, we brought them in, we want to add them to our landscape because we like them for some reason. But once they're here, they have no natural predators. They readily reproduce, and they just get out of control. So a lot of times, even something that's we know is invasive, and maybe the forest preserve districts spend a lot of time trying to eradicate them from the preserves. Sometimes you can still find them for sale in the nursery trade. You may find them for sale at Lowe's or Home Depot, or order them from Amazon. There are some plants that are actually illegal to sell in Illinois because of the problems they cause, but you can still order them on Amazon because they're not illegal everywhere. So it's good to know before you order a plant. It's good to do your research. You want to know where this is coming from and what you're bringing in. Sometimes you're bringing in things that have pathogens on them that are going to harm your other plants. That just happened last year. Some shrubs that were brought into Walmart. And they had a pathogen in them. And once it was identified and they figured out where it came from, they had to go and destroy that whole nursery stock because they couldn't risk that getting in. So invasive things are frequently harmful to wildlife. And I'll tell you a couple of stories about those as we get on. And yeah, a lot of times forest preserve districts are battling these in their preserves. because they are just so destructive and they crowd out our native species, and they're just not good. So as homeowners, we need to know what they are, be able to identify them, and then help to prevent their spread. All right. So how do we get rid of them? We'll get into the nitty gritty into what they are, but in general, on getting rid of them, first, just don't plant them. You know, there are always better choices. Monitor your land. Take a look. I know I have honeysuckle and buckthorn and multiflora rose in the back part of my property, and I've been spending the last probably 3 years getting rid of that stuff, because there's a limited window a lot of times on when you can do it. So I've been working very, very hard to get rid of all of that. And as they resprout up, I'm cutting them again, digging them up, getting rid of them, because I don't want this stuff on my land. And then you can educate your friends and neighbors. So I see wow, somehow we're at 103 participants here. I don't even know how that happened. So all of you now, once you learn what these are, now you can go out and spread the word as well. And you can help people understand what they are, why they're bad, and how to get rid of them. All right, so how do we get rid of them? Mechanical controls, first line of defense: pull, dig, cut. Pull them out if you can pull them out, dig them out if you can, or cut. Now, don't shoot the messenger, okay? Yes, sometimes chemicals are needed to get rid of this stuff. And I know everybody wants to hate on glyphosate and some of these other weed killers. And by all means, do not just go out and broadcast spray. And that is definitely bad. However, judicious, proper use of chemicals only when necessary is a line of defense. So for example, I mentioned I have honeysuckle in my yard. When I cut that honeysuckle out, because the roots go deep, and if you don't get them all, it's just going to come back. If you cut it, it comes back angry. And people laugh when I say that, but it's true. As I'm cutting back there, I'm finding stumps of where it had been cut, and then it shot up 10 more trunks. So somebody took the time to cut it, didn't treat the stump, and now I've got to deal with 10 stumps instead of just one. So I put the image there, those disposable paintbrushes, those are perfect. So you get the proper chemical. So the Roundup Poison Ivy formula is good. That brush killer, that's triclopyr, is the chemical name there. Both of those, Roundup is really good for honeysuckle. The triclopyr is really good for buckthorn. And so what I do is I take a small container of it, always wear gloves, read the instructions. Please, please, please. Number one rule when you're using chemicals: read the instructions and use them properly. Use them per the instructions. So take a small cup or dish or whatever of that chemical, something you can throw away afterwards. Use your disposable paintbrush, just dip it in there and brush it on the cut stump. Don't spray, don't pour, just take that little thing and brush it right on the cut stump. That's all you need to do. That will get rid of the honeysuckle. All right, so, and I also included the picture there of a prairie burn. In larger installations, burning is a very effective tool at keeping the invasives out. You probably see the Forest Preserve District burns preserves every year. It's really, really good for them because those native plants have really long roots, which will, I don't think I can get to that later, but our native plants have super long roots, which helps them get by when a burn goes through. It's a very natural occurrence and something that's needed during helping to get rid of all of the invasive stuff. So these are all methods. Again, pull, dig, cut, first line of defense. Chemicals only when needed. All right, so let's talk about some of the invasives that are out there. And so the way the format, the way this is going to go, I will mention several plants that are sort of in the same, with the same habits. And then I'll mention some things that you can plant instead. So we're going to start with honeysuckle. This is a huge one. This is everywhere. Berries are not the first choice of foods for birds, but they will eat them when there's nothing else to eat. They then poop out the seeds, which makes gives the seeds a little bit of fertilizer to go with them, and they readily sprout up. They are multi-trunked. They turn into just this big, nasty wall of green. If you're going through an open area or driving by an area and you see just this wall of green leaves and stuff, that is probably honeysuckle. It chokes out everything else around it. Nothing else is able to grow. And it's really, really not good for the birds. I saw a study that showed birds who nest in honeysuckle have a higher chance of nest predation. So what that means is if a bird builds its nest in the honeysuckle, there's a higher chance that something's going to come in and get at the eggs. So raccoons, opossums, even snakes, all of those will eat bird eggs. And they don't know why that's the way it is, but it is. I have a suspicion it may be because of the structure of the plant. There's enough area for them to climb that it makes it real easy for them to get at the nest. So again, these are really, really bad for birds. You can see they've got the red berries there in late summer, fall. You've probably seen these flowers before. They're not flowering yet, but they will be probably another month or so. I know when I was a kid, we used to pick those flowers off, and if you suck on the end, you get a little sweet taste, and that's the nectar that's there that the insects will go after. But yeah, great big wall of green. That's all it is. And again, that's the one where if you cut it, you absolutely have to treat it. Otherwise, it just will continuously come back. Autumn olive is another one that's a big problem in the forest preserves, though I have seen it on some farmland adjacent property. This is another big wall of green, though it's a little more of a light sagey sort of green. I am seeing some comments pop up in the comment section. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A box, and I will get to all of them at the end. I promise. The Q&A box just makes it a little bit easier for me to see the questions. So anyway, so autumn olive, again, that's got the berries on it that animals will eat, poop out the seeds and spread it. This is all over the preserves, maybe not as bad as honeysuckle, but it's definitely there. And, you know, people like honeysuckle and autumn olive because they make a nice screen. There's better choices. There really, really are. Something that's not nearly as invasive as this is. Burning bush. This is another one that's used real frequently in the landscape trade. I know for a fact this is still being sold. Euonymus alatus. And there are some, it's the winged burning bush. There are some euonymus that are native and that are okay to plant. One common name is wahoo tree, and I think I mentioned that later. But this one in particular is now being found in forest preserves. So people plant it in their yard because it's got that really pretty fall color, but it's escaping. It's escaping and ending up in forest preserves in places where we don't want it. So again, this is really one to stay away from. Multiflora Rose is another one. This is another one that's frequently found in forest preserves. I had it in the back of my property, and boy, is it nasty. It's got some really nasty thorns on it. You know, it's sort of a pretty rose, I guess, but it just makes this big thorny mass of yuck. So again, stay away from this one. There is plenty of other things that you can plant instead, like these. I didn't mention it here. There is a native rose, and the native rose doesn't get that rot, so I'm told, that the center of a lot of roses get. So native rose is a good one. 9-bark has beautiful fall foliage in it. It's easy to grow. It grows pretty readily just about anywhere. New Jersey tea has those gorgeous clusters of flowers on them. Fragrant sumac is another one. Spice bush is great. Spice bush has is the host plant for the spice bush swallowtail. Is a beautiful butterfly with a freaky looking caterpillar. But it's got, again, that beautiful bright yellow foliage afterwards. And then there's the wahoo. So that's the native euonymus. So again, always better choices. All right, so we mentioned buckthorn. Buckthorn is a very not nice one. Now, funny story about buckthorn. Part of the reason buckthorn is such a problem, especially in the Chicagoland area, is because the Morton Arboretum recommended planting it back in the 1950s. As towns, municipalities were looking for ornamental trees to plant, buckthorn was recommended because it gets its leaves early and it drops its leaves late. And so it stays green for a real long time. And so, you know, the Arboretum recommended everyone plant it. Well, what we didn't know is how easily it would spread. So it gets those little black berries on it. Those berries are a diuretic and a laxative. So as the birds eat them, it gives them diarrhea. Who would have thought I'd be talking about birds getting diarrhea on a live webinar in front of 100 people? But it gives the birds diarrhea and it actually dehydrates them and is responsible for the death of many birds, especially those migrating through that are kind of desperate for something to eat in the early spring and in the late fall when there's not a whole lot out there. Again, it's not a preferred food for them, fortunately, but if it's around, they'll eat it. And then it dehydrates them. So you and I, when we have the runs, you know, we know to drink a lot of extra water and get extra fluids so we don't get dehydrated. Birds don't have that. So as they get dehydrated, they may just go and eat more berries, which compounds the problem. So it is responsible for the death of lots of songbirds every year. So this is really a nasty one. We want to get out of there. It's another one that forms that sort of wall of green, frequently found with honeysuckle. You can see the leaves are very shiny, which is one. There's two different types of buckthorn. There's glossy buckthorn and common buckthorn. But you can see these very deeply veined leaves here, slightly offset. And the other way I was always told to identify it is, so wherever you see a fork in the tree like this, there will be a little thorn almost looking thing right here. And so there's a thorn in the crotch. So I always look for that little thorn in the crotch where the branch splits. And that's generally also a good indicator that it's buckthorn. Okay, tree of heaven is another one we find a lot. Don't confuse this with black walnut. Black walnut also has that large compound leaf. But the trunk of it looks very different. So you can see the seeds off of the tree of heaven too. Again, you know, the walnut's gonna have big walnuts on it for seeds, not all these little helicopter looking things. But look at all those seeds. So again, one of the tree of heaven, big problem because of all of those seeds. Fortunately, I haven't seen too much of it, but I know it is in the forest preserves. Instead, if you're looking for those kind of taller shrubs, that understory kind of thing, look at a serviceberry. There's a couple of different native types of serviceberry. They're very pretty when they flower. Redbud, God, redbud is one of my favorite shrub, tall shrub, short tree kind of plants. This is the time of year when it's starting to bloom. And, you know, when we're all so desperate for some color outside, you can see how pink the red buds are getting right now. And then blue beech is another one that's really pretty, multi-trunked, gets a little bit tall, but not too tall, and just really nice looking plant. Other choices, You got your pagoda dogwoods or your red twig dogwoods. Both of those are nice choices. I love red twig dogwood because those stems stay red all winter long. Very, very striking against the white snow and all the brown of everything else. Really, really pretty plant. And then we've got our elderberry. You can see it puts out, yes, the berries are edible on elderberry. Some people like to make elderberry syrup and things like that out of there. Supposedly has medicinal properties. And then witch hazel too. I love witch hazel. I like the weird plants. You know, those of you who have seen my other talks, I love weird plants. Like the weirder the better. Witch hazel flowers at really bizarre times. So like December, or sometimes like late February, early March, depends on which one you get. But it's got that bizarre looking flower on it. And it's just that pop of color at a time when we really don't have much color anywhere else. So again, all of these really great choices instead of those invasives. Vinca minor. Oh, I hate Vinca minor. It is very, very difficult to get rid of, and it spreads everywhere. If you leave even a little bit of it behind, it will sprout. It's planted as a ground cover, especially in areas where nothing else will grow. Just don't do it. Like I said, once it gets in and takes over, it is almost impossible to get rid of. That image on the right is from a forest in New York. And just look at how it blankets the ground. That's going to choke out everything else that tries to grow there. It's just so destructive. Just don't do it. We have plenty of lovely native ground covers. Wild ginger is my absolute favorite. If you saw my talk on spring ephemerals, I mentioned wild ginger in there too because it's lovely. It's got those big heart-shaped leaves on it. It's got a really weird sort of burgundy flower, but it makes for a really, really nice ground cover. And the roots smell just like that ginger that we cook with, even though they're completely unrelated. Wild petunias are also another good one. Wild phlox. And then Canada anemone is another really fun one too. Purple loosestrife is a really bad, nasty, nasty plant. So this one likes it wet. So if you have a wetter area, like usually more wetlands, you'll see them as you're driving along the road. It looks really pretty, you know, this big stand of purple. But again, this is a really insidious invasive that gets in and is really hard to get rid of. And then Phragmites is another one too. If you've got any kind of pond in your neighborhood, there's a really good chance you've got some Phragmites in there. You can see how tall it gets, you know, that man is of normal height. You know, this stuff gets 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall. And it's got that kind of fuzzy area at the top. Those are all seeds. So it just makes just a massive number of seeds, spreads them pretty readily, and forms these stands that just completely choke any wetland area. And they don't need a lot of water, just any little ditch will do. They're just nasty, nasty little plants. And they're everywhere. I guarantee as you're driving along this summer, you will see this stuff everywhere. And that's one of the things I've noticed. The more I learn about these, the more I see them. Like I've never seen that. I never noticed this stuff before because, you know, it's just a plant. You see plants everywhere, plant, 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 plant. Once you actually know what they are, all of a sudden, oh, that's what that is. And now you see it everywhere. So instead, if you have a wet area and you're looking for something to plant, blue flag iris likes to have his feet wet. So put those right in the water. They like to be right on the shoreline. Palm sedge, Joe Pyeweed, big blue stem, those can all go along the shoreline as well. There's tons of great shoreline plants. I did a whole webinar on things to plant in wet areas. So if you're interested in finding out more things you can plant in a wet area, check out that, or also the rain gardens. I did one on rain gardens and rain barrels. Talked lots and lots about native plants that go in where you have a lot of wet areas. Garlic mustard. This is one that I think was brought in as a food plant, and it is edible. I find this randomly in my yard, usually under trees. The seeds, animals must eat the seeds and replant them. This stuff is nasty. It actually puts out a chemical through the roots that inhibit the growth of anything else. So it makes all these seeds, it inhibits the growth of anything else, and then ends up creating these huge, massive stands of just itself. So getting it out is super important, and not letting it continue to grow. It's fortunately easy to pull out, as long as you don't have too big of an area of it. But here's the thing, when you pull it, you need to pull it and you need to bag it and throw it away. Do not compost it. Another strategy this guy has for surviving is, even if you pull the plant, those seeds will still develop. The plant will take all the stored energy it has and push it into seed development so that the seeds will continue to develop and fall, and now you've just replanted them again. So don't compost it. Don't just drop it, leave it behind. Bag it up, throw it away. Nasty, nasty, nasty. And, you know, if you're feeling particularly vindictive, you can chop it up and add it to some olive oil, and it makes, you know, a lovely spread. Other things that you can that you can plant: wild hyacinth. I haven't mentioned this one in a while, but it's really cute, and it's an early bloomer. So butterfly weed. Butterfly weed is a milkweed, and as we all know from the big push on monarchs, milkweed is the one thing monarchs will lay their eggs on. So if you want to bring monarch butterflies to your yard, you have to plant milkweeds. And butterfly weed is one of the nicest ones you can put in your yard. It only grows to about knee height. It's got that striking orange flower on it. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. And again, it will help to bring pollinators like monarch butterflies to your yard. And then asters are actually a really great plant because they bloom in the fall. So by having some early spring bloomers like the wild hyacinth and some things that bloom in the fall like asters, you're not only having things blooming all year long, more time for you to enjoy your plants, it's also more food source for those pollinators that come through. Monarch butterflies migrate every year down to Mexico. And so when it's fall and they're trying to come through here, they still need to eat. As a matter of fact, they need to eat a lot because it's really hard work to get all the way down to Mexico. So having plants that bloom in the fall is really important for those migrators. Okay, grass. Now I know some of you are going to say, well, that's not an invasive species. Yeah, it is. Lawn is the #1 irrigated crop in the US. There are 40 million acres of lawn in the US. Why do we have lawn? Well, a long time ago, it was a sign of wealth over in England to have a lawn that's essentially a big unproductive area of space that you didn't have to farm, that you could spend your time relaxing on. And, you know, it was a way to show your wealth. And so, of course, Americans are like, well, hey, I want to show that off too. So I need to have a lawn. And thus, the suburban lawn was born. Americans spend $30 billion on lawn care every year. That's all the chemicals and the aeration and the watering and everything that we do, the herbicides, the grub control. Grubs, by the way, are baby insects. So those pollinators that you're planting all of these lovely flowers to help support, if you then go and put grub control down on your lawn, you're killing the babies. You're not going to have pollinators then for your lovely pollinator garden. And when I say, we're talking about things like lightning bugs. So if you enjoy seeing lightning bugs at night, you gotta leave their babies alone. So those grub controls and things, they're really, really terrible for our insect ecosystems. Numbers show anywhere from 50 to 75% of residential water is used to water grass in the summer. Man, if you're trying to conserve water, you know, most of it's going into the lawn. So, and then, you know, 2.4 metric tons of fertilizers are used. All that fertilizer doesn't go into your grass. Much of it actually gets washed off and ends up in our waterways. So it's contaminating our source of water, our drinking water, and our lakes, our streams. All of that fertilizer, not all of it, but a lot of that fertilizer that we use, as soon as it rains, washes it away. And 17 million gallons of gas go into lawnmowers every year. So, you know, lawns are just, they're a scam. They really are. So all of this money and time and everything we put into growing a crop that's not productive. It doesn't feed insects. I mean, I suppose rabbits eat it, but then they're also eating all of the herbicides and the insecticides and all the things that we're putting down on our grass too. But it's not good for the insects. It's not good for anything. So what can we do about it? Well, instead plant literally anything else, preferably native. But so increase the size of your flower beds. You know, make your flower beds bigger. That'll be less for you to mow. Buffalo grass. I'm actually trying an experiment in my yard right now with buffalo grass. And it's a native type of grass that has super deep roots. What that means is in the middle of July, when it's hot and dry, it doesn't care. It's got these really long roots that go down deep into the ground, and it's getting all the water it needs from deep in the soil. So that buffalo grass, you don't have to water it. You don't have to fertilize it. You don't have to really do anything to it. And I challenge anybody who's not a plant expert to tell me the difference between the grass that we have now and the buffalo grass that would be better to plant. The other nice thing about buffalo grass is it only gets to, I think, 18 inches ever. You can actually get away with mowing it like twice a year. So that's super cool too. Sedges like to grow in shady areas, especially. There are some that can tolerate better sun, but it just sort of flops over, so it never gets very tall. Again, you don't have to mow it. And it creates that lush carpet of grass-looking stuff without all the maintenance. So bring natives to your yard. That is really the upshot here. And one of the things you want to think about is, what's your soil type? Here in the Chicagoland region, we have a whole lot of clay. A lot of stuff doesn't like clay, so we spend lots of time amending the soil and adding things to it, trying to fool the plants into thinking that they're in better quality soil. Just use our natives. They're used to this soil type. They go right through that clay. They improve drainage because those roots, as they're digging through that clay, gives the water a place to go down. Are you in shade, part shade, or sun? Again, picking plants that match the conditions of your yard is really important to helping them to thrive. And is it wet, dry, or mesic? Mesic is a term you're going to see a lot of times on here, and it's sort of that Goldilocks thing. So you've got wet, you've got dry, and mesic is right in the middle. It's sometimes maybe a little wet, sometimes a little bit dry, but it's that right in the middle Goldilocks situation. So this program is part of our Conservation at Home program. It's a free program the Conservation Foundation does, where I or one of my coworkers can come out to your yard, walk around with you, and talk about native plants that you could put in your yard. Now, if you are new to this and you're just looking for suggestions, give us a call. We'll come out, we'll walk around, we'll make some recommendations, do a little bit of education for you, and there's no charge for that. Now, Maybe on the other hand, you're like, well, I've got this. My yard is full of natives. I've got a rain barrel. I'm, helping keep the rainwater where it falls. I'm all good. You give us a call. We bring you your sign. Now we do ask for a $50 donation. In that case, just it pays for the cost of the sign as well as our time and everything. But, if that's a hardship, we can discuss. But the important thing is we want to come out and help you. So again, I am the Will County director. So if you're in Will County, it would be me. If you're somewhere else, it'll be someplace else. Outside of our 4-county area, sometimes we make visits, but we also have some agencies that are franchisees. So if you're in Cook County, for example, the Cook County Forest Preserve District is a franchisee. And so they'll send one of their people out. Same program, just depends on where you're at. But we have almost 1,000 certified properties. Actually, I'm going to guess we're over that by now. So we talked a lot about native plants, and that's always my big thing. Why do I talk so much about native plants? Well, for one, as we mentioned, they save you time and money. You're no longer spending your time and your money trying to baby those plants, fertilizing and watering and trying to fool them into thinking they're someplace else. But when you plant native plants, now you get caterpillars. When you get the caterpillars, now you get the birds. Now, of course, the caterpillars don't all get eaten, and some turn into beautiful butterflies, and now you've got butterflies in your yard too. But then those birds, you can see he's even got a little caterpillar in his mouth. By the way, caterpillars, especially in the springtime, are a huge food source for birds. They're very densely packed with nutrients. I've read they're more nutritious than beef in a lot of cases. So, I mean, you think about all the iron and all the vitamins and minerals and things like that that are in beef. Caterpillars go even above and beyond that. So, and on top of that, because of their soft, squishy bodies, they're perfect for feeding to their young. So they're nutrient packed, they're easy to eat, they're perfect for birds to feed to their babies. So springtime is huge for birds eating caterpillars. But then when we have those birds, we also get other birds too. So now, instead of your yard being apart from the ecosystem, you're now a part of the ecosystem. So if you are interested in getting more involved with the Conservation Foundation, you can become a member. Once the stay-at-home order is done, you can come visit us at our McDonald farm in Naperville, or we have a second location in Montgomery called the Dixon-Merst Farm. That's a historic farm. It's absolutely gorgeous. They do lots of events there. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing this year, but normally during normal times, they have events there every summer, as well as summer camps, lots of stuff going on. Follow us on social media. That's where you'll find out more about future webinars that we're going to be doing. I've been told they are now finally on our website as well. So if you're interested in watching more webinars, I have just been given permission to extend them. So now they don't just go through May, we're going to go into June as well. So I'm starting to schedule those. So if there's any topics you would like to hear a new webinar on, drop me a note, drop a note in the chat, drop me an email. Let me know what you want to hear about. I'm always looking for ideas. And you can also get your yard certified. All right, let's get to some of the questions here. So going over to our Q&A box, John Slack would like to know if there's anyone here from outside the US. We'll check the chat for that one and see. I have no way of knowing where everybody's from. Elena asks, I just bought a house with a burning bush. How do I tell if it's the invasive one? If it is, what's the best way to dispose of it? Okay, so the reason, one of the common names for the invasive burning bush is winged burning bush. And so if you look at the stem, you'll see it almost looks like it has little wings coming off the side of it. So if it has that, that's the bad one. Chances are it probably is. If it is, the best way to get rid of it, try to dig it out. If you can dig it out, that's the best. If not, cut the stump down as far as you can and then treat it, as I mentioned, with that disposable paintbrush, and probably I'd probably use glyphosate for that. I would have to look it up for sure to make sure that's the right one for it. But a lot of times if you read the side of the container, it'll tell you what plants it's good for. Are there any native types of honeysuckle, like the honeysuckle vine? Yes, there are a couple of native honeysuckles. They're not all invasive. The really bad ones are either called Japanese honeysuckle or Amur, A-M-U-R honeysuckle. Those are the bad ones. But yes, there are some native ones as well. How can we influence legislation to prohibit the sale of invasive species at nurseries and big box stores, especially burning bush? Great question, Dee. Obviously, you know, you can always send a note to your representative about that. There is a list, the Landscapers Association has a list, and they have put together a list of invasive things that shouldn't be planted. The question is, the people at the big box stores just don't always know. So if they're selling them, it's illegal and they should know about it. So proper identification and confirming that it is one of the illegal ones, you know, would be good. For the things that aren't currently illegal but probably should be, again, write your representatives and your Congress people. That's probably the best way to do it. Use which products on Multiflora Rose and Buckthorn? Buckthorn is definitely triclopyr. That's the better one. That's even better than glyphosate for Buckthorn. Multiflora Rose, I believe glyphosate is fine on that one. Recommend a good native ground cover that will grow under maple. Again, the ground covers that I mentioned, the wild petunia, the wild ginger, you know, I've got wild ginger growing under a stand of pine trees, and almost nothing grows under the pine trees. So wild ginger is a really, really good one. Can you burn garlic mustard? I think so. I'm not 100% sure on that one. I would have to look that one up. Definitely, the way I've always done it is just bag and dispose. I would think so, but again, not 100% sure on that. Mulberry, great question. So mulberry is not necessarily exotic invasive. It is, however, aggressive, spreads pretty readily, and is kind of what I would call a trash tree. That said, I have one. The birds love it, and I keep it around just because it's really fun to watch the birds eating the berries, and hey, the berries are delicious. So, yeah, so I'm fairly certain it's native. There's a couple different kinds. You know, if you're on the fence about whether or not to get rid of it, get rid of it. But if it's in a spot and it's doing well and you don't mind the mess that it makes, I'd leave it. Do you suggest viburnum as a buckthorn replacement? Absolutely. Viburnums are great. You know, the things that I mentioned is not a complete list. As a matter of fact, the, what is it? Chicago Region Trees Initiative put out a booklet called Healthy Hedges. So do a Google search on Healthy Hedges, Chicago Region Trees Initiative, find their page, and they've got a really nice list of things that you can, native things that are better to replace. They did a study on canopy cover, and just looking at the number of trees that, you know, we have in the region and what types they are and what percentage they are of the entire tree canopy. Buckthorn is over half. So over half of the tree canopy in the Chicago region is buckthorn. which is terrible. I mean, this is supposed to be an oak hickory forest out here. They're supposed to have these really great oaks and hickories and things. Maples, kind of, it sort of depends. They're not terrible, but they're not the best. And, you know, unfortunately, most of the canopy cover is buckthorn. So, oh, Trisha, thank you. She shared that, which, okay, wasn't sure you could do that. And the CRTI Healthy Hedges, that is in the chat. So thank you for sharing that. I can confirm both the links that Trisha posted are good. So feel free to use those. So yeah, so definitely anything you can replace buckthorn with, please do. Kelly says, I'd love to reduce the size of my lawn with some no maintenance ground cover. I have a large septic field under it and was told we should avoid deep roots. Any good ideas? Unfortunately, not really, because all native plants generally have deeper roots. Coneflowers are probably the shallowest roots that I can think of. They're still about 5 feet deep. Yeah, unfortunately with septic fields, I stay away from messing with that, because you don't want to cause problems with that, because that's a really expensive fix if you mess with that. Do we have an affiliate in the Cincinnati area? Great question, Shelley. I don't think so. I don't know for a fact, but I am not aware of anything in Ohio. But if you want to drop me an email, my coworker who is in charge of the whole program, he's the one who handles all of that, and would he would know for sure. So drop me an email, and I can find out for you. Is there a link to other recorded webinars? Yes, Stephanie, as I mentioned, our YouTube page has all of these webinars that I have done, including this one. When I'm done, I'll make sure I get them all uploaded. So yeah, so all of the webinars can be found on our YouTube page. Oh, Creeping Charlie. Creeping Charlie's a really hard one to get rid of, Alice. Yeah, your best bet is just to pull as much as you can. If you really want to get rid of it, careful application of, I don't know if glyphosate's even the best thing for that one. I would have to look. I'm not sure if it's the best for herbaceous stuff. Yeah, that is a really tough one to get rid of. You're right about that. Conserve at home in DeKalb County. I'm pretty sure, I think so. I think we might have somebody up there. Drop me an email, Mary Beth, and I will get that over to Jim. Jim would be the one who would know that. Oh, what about Queen Anne's lace? Great question. Queen Anne's lace is actually native, but it's another one of those that's kind of aggressive and gets kind of obnoxious because it spreads and whatever. Yeah, that is a tough one. So I would say just, if it's someplace where you don't want it, try and get rid of it. And I'm not sure who this is on our account. Yes, I am almost done. I'm trying to get through these questions. Let's see, I answered that one already. Orville, you have lists by environment and properties such as, I'm not really sure what you that. Is it true cattails are invasive? There are two types of cattails in this area, narrow-leafed and broadleafed. And the broadleaf one is invasive. The narrow-leaf is the native one. I think I'm getting that right. They're another one that's super, super aggressive though. So yeah, it can be kind of tricky. Where can I find some of the native ground covers? I've found Canada anemone, but not those others mentioned. My favorite place is Possibility Place in Moni. They are a native plant nursery, and they're really, really good for that. They've got everything they have is native, and so they're really, really good. Also, if you're not near their natural gardens natives, I think they're called, in Naperville, there's a couple of other native plant nurseries. There's also online, you can go to Prairie Nursery or Prairie Moon Nursery. Those are also good places. Orville, I unfortunately don't have time to go into the whole list of that, but if you check out our website, there are some, we've got lots of great resources there. If you check out previous webinars that I've done, you know, I go into all of that in those as well. Lake County, again, drop me an email and I'll get you to the right place. Once my forest of honeysuckle and multiflora roses are removed, will native plants sprout, or do I need to plant into this vacant space? It really depends on what's in the seed bank. Things may sprout, they may not. It depends on what's there. So you can wait and see what comes up. When I did that in my backyard, I happened to have some Solomon seal came out of nowhere. So that was cool. But there's a pretty good chance you're gonna have to sort of jumpstart it by planting stuff. Okay, one more. Grub, you mentioned grub killer. We use milky spore. Is that harming insect eggs as well? Anything that's harming the grubs, milky, whether it's organic or not, if it's killing things, it's gonna kill things. That's its point. So if you're using milky spore, that's probably killing the grubs, which are the baby insects. Okay, with that, I know I've got so many more questions on here. I'm so sorry I didn't get to answer all of them. Unfortunately, we do have another webinar scheduled at 2 o'clock, so I can't really go over any more. Please, please feel free to email me your questions if I didn't get to them. I'm more than happy to answer questions over email as well. And I'm really, really sorry I wasn't able to get to all of the questions here, but thank you so much. I am so thankful for all of you who came out to join me today. Again, contact me with any questions that you may have, and I am more than happy about. So thank you again. Stay safe, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again on Monday for our next webinar. Bye-bye.